pages. It's time to type it right. It's time to get things started on the most booktational, inspirational Once Upon an Author show. Here's your host, Danielle M. Orsino. Yay!
A hero is someone in spite of weakness, doubt, or not always knowing the answers, goes ahead and overcomes anyway. Christopher Reeve. Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Once Upon an Author. I am your host, Danielle M. Morsino. All right, everybody, we're jumping in. Over the last two episodes, we've talked about my dragons. How are they created, from their skin to their wings to fire and ice? Now it's time. We're going to talk about the book that featured them. Fire, Ice, Acid, and Heart. A novella that was never supposed to exist, but to be honest, has become one of my favorite books. I think to this day published, let me just say published, that I've written. So it came about as a short story, and I'm probably going to get teary-eyed during this episode. So I'm just going to warn you guys now, because a lot of things have happened since writing this book and where it came from. So this will probably be, I'm already getting teary-eyed, an emotional journey. So I'm going to warn everybody now, get your tissues out, especially if you are a pet owner. Let's start with that. But this book came from my best friend from high school, Jen. Yes, the one who, inspired Lady Serena. Her dog, Callie, had passed. And so to honor her, I said, can I make her a dragon? Because all my dragons, as we said, are someone's dogs. So she was like, sure, that sounds great. So she decided she'd be a fire breather. Now, Callie was a pit bull. She was a rescue. So I got it all together, and the short story originally was Jen, so I named her Genera in the story, and Calliandra, that was her dragon's name, met in a snow pollen field. I don't know, I just made up snow pollen. I'll get into all that later, but there's a whole story with snow pollen, but it does represent something. And they met because Calliandra was sneezing and just lighting the world on fire. So she was allergic to snow pollen. That's what I figured out. And so there's purple fire going everywhere. And Genera, the fae, she's dark fae, decides that she's going to make this mud pack. And she grabs candula oil and she's dodging all these fireballs and gets to the poor dragon and shoves it up her nose because she's trying to figure out how to make the sneezing stop. And the sneezing stops. And from there, sealed deal, done. They are best buds. So that's a story I wrote. I put it up, I think, on a blog. And people loved it. Surprise, surprise. They loved where it came from. They loved everything behind it. And they wanted just more of these two. And I did make them kind of goofy in the story because that's just Jen. She's beautiful and she's goofy as heck. So I put all that in there. So I was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And I figured, what is the least favorite thing Jen would ever do? And I recalled the time she came to my Taekwondo class once. And my instructor was trying to teach her self-defense, really trying. And Jen's answer to everything was, I'd get a gun. I'll run away. Like, there was nothing you could teach this girl. And some guy walked by the class and he was like, girls party at this place. And Jen was like, where? And gone. I mean, she just walked out of the class. So the least favorite thing Jen could ever do, I was like, a tournament. And so the tournament of Fire, Ice, Acid was born. And I was going to get my revenge and pop Jen right in the middle of this tournament with her dog. So now it was Genera and Calliandra going through a tournament. Let me tell you, Jen was just thrilled about that. So the premise was going to be that the dragons and their riders would compete once a red moon, I think I said a red sun, for a place in these elite ranks of fighters, kind of like what our Navy SEALs would go through. Think of it like that. So I had the Blaze Battalion, the Ice Invaders, and the Acid Assault. So fire, ice, or acid, whatever you were, that's what you were competing to get into. And I figured it would happen like once a year, big deal, all this thing. And I was like, okay, got the premise. Now I got to execute it. Writing a book about dragon battles is not as easy as it sounds because I can write battles with people, but how do dragons fight? Do they use their wings? Do they fight like eagles? So I watched a lot of Discovery Channel stuff about eagles and fighting with their claws. So I got that part. But I'm like, what is the tournament going to be? Like, I can't just have them going out there. It's not like a boxing match. So I thought about my time in tournaments and fighting. Okay, it's point match. You hit somebody, everybody agrees it's a point, 1 point. Okay. And then I decided to throw dodgeball in there. I think I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I think I might have been watching the movie Dodgeball. And I think that might have been where it came from, like the Girl Scout scene, the very first dodgeball tournament that Vince Vaughn is in. I think that might have gotten in my little brain there for a second. And so I made it part martial art tournament, part dodgeball. So the premise was I got a boundary line and I've got a dragon crystal egg on each side, and you have to protect it. So it could be part capture the flag, dodgeball, martial art tournament. So the idea was you throw plasma balls across the line, and if it hits your armor, the armor is in tune with the egg. So the egg would start to hatch. If you get hit, your dragon gets hit. That's what happens. If the dragon egg hatches after a certain number of hits, the dragon flies out to the judge's table, which was the king, and forced hatching, you're out. If there's no hit after a certain amount of time, you could capture the other person's egg. So that was the idea. I'm like, okay, I kind of got what's going on. Now, obviously, I massaged the rules as we went. Okay, cool. Got the idea. But I still have to figure out how dragons are going to fight each other over a boundary line. And remember, my dragons don't like take up off in the air like Superman. So now I had to build the Colosseum, build the boundary lines. Would there be water hazards, jump off rocks, all that stuff. So I went out and bought dragon figurines at like the craft store or something, and a bunch of tinfoil, and made little plasma balls and threw them at each other. And I probably look like I did when I was about 6 years old with Masters of the Universe figurines and my brother. That's what it looked like. My office was a mess. So I was doing that, and then I was acting out the rider moves with my pups standing in sometimes for dragons. Nobody was hurt during this, but things got dicey, I'll be honest with you. My husband walked in a couple times, took one look at me, and just closed the door, shaking his head, and was like, I don't want to know what's going on in here. And sometimes he'd look at the pups and be like, bark once if you need help. I'll rescue you. It was dangerous, but we were trying to figure out, how is this going to work? And I also, because it was martial arts based in a way, I wanted to put some of my signature moves in. Moves that I knew, and my instructor would tell me time and time again, would never work in real life. And I knew they wouldn't. My scorpion sting kick, it's never going to work. I bend down, put my forehead to my knee, and my back leg comes up like a scorpion's tail, and I hit the target. This is never going to work in real life. It was just my Mortal Kombat move that I could do. And I'm like, this is so cool. Of course, I wrote it in the book. So it was moves like that that I knew. A butterfly kick, like things that just look pretty, but are never going to be useful ever. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody's dropping into a split and hitting somebody. I tried it. I've gotten my block rocked more than I can tell you when I was trying these fancy moves. They don't work. But I wanted to get them in. So I had it, but it took months. This book literally took months to write. And this was my first book I was writing in a sequence. All the other books had just come, and I was still like piecing them together like a jigsaw. This one I did still handwrite, and I did not write it in order, but it was a book I had to finish. All the other ones were pieced together. I started them all at the same time, not knowing what I was doing. This was the first one that I was going to sit and write. What the heck am I doing? I'm an author now. Yeah, that's right. And I have a publisher that I have to answer to. Remember back then when I wrote the first couple? I never remember to answer to. I was just trying this. Now there were deadlines. I had to fit it into a world I already built. Okay, this changes things a little bit. All this had to like come into play. I'd never done that before. So there are some panic moments, and I'm trying to figure it out. Well, through this, I suffer from horrible migraines. So I was getting Botox for migraines. My doctor of umpteen years, Dr. Zabo, I would see, he was a huge fan. Every time I walked in that office, what's going on with the books? He would have read whatever we were up to at that point. First of all, his dream was always for them to be graphic novels, which was my original idea. And he swore that's what I should have been doing. Always. Now, he did write my PA school recommendations, but he was always like, you don't want to go into healthcare, Danielle. He's like, you were a nurse, that's cute. Do not be a physician assistant. He said, wrote my recommendations, but was the first one to be like, no, 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 no. But every day I walked in, I would see him every 3 months for 50 injections. What's going on with the books? I read this book, and he would give me his opinion. So we were sitting there one day discussing it, and I said something like about Callie and Janera, and he was like, well, how did they get in the books? And I was like, well, Jen's dog died. And he looked at me, he's like, okay, so? And I'm like, her dog died. Like, come on, doc. And he's like, well, I'm not in the books. So I looked at him, I was like, okay, I'll put you in the book. What do you want to be? Quarter dark, quarter light. And he looked at me, he goes, oh no, I can't get on board with Jarvok sometimes. And Aurora's too naive. And he gave me a whole reason. And I went, all right, so what does that leave? I can't be a mermaid. They're dead. And he goes, no, no, no. And he starts thinking, he goes, I want to be a dragon. And I'm like, no. Once again, let's explain. Dragons are the. He goes, no, no, I need to be a dragon. I go, all right, for you, I'll make an exception. And he's like, okay. I said, what kind of dragon? We go through all the dragons. He stops at acid breather. He goes, that's it. I want to be an acid breathing dragon. Now, if you knew Dr. Zabo, this man was the nicest man in the world, socially awkward, told jokes that no doctor was supposed to tell you. But when you walked in the office, you could hear his laughter from down the corridor. Then I just loved him to death. 10 years I knew this man. We were good friends. He did not speak to me like a patient. He would call me at like 9:30 at night to tell me whatever test result, and then we'd just wind up talking. He treated me like more of a healthcare colleague than ever a patient. I loved him to death. And when I mean to death, I loved this man. I have a dilated infundibulum of left communicating artery. Bottom line, it's preaneurysm. And it changed one day. I was in bad shape, and I thought I was going in for brain surgery. I was sitting on this man's table, terrified. I got one pupil totally dilated. I'm in bad shape. And he looks at me, he goes, okay, Danielle, I got to ask you a real serious question. And I'm like, oh, okay, doc. And I can barely sit on this table. Shines a light in my eye, takes it away, and he goes, what kind of drugs did you take last night, and was it worth it? And I look at him, I go, what? And he goes, I'm kidding with you. If I can't make you laugh right now, who can? And I'm like, you mother effer. And he's laughing. He goes, come on, we got to go in my office. He's like, we got to have a talk. Follow me. And I look at him, I go, I can't get off the exam table. He goes, oh, that's right, you can't walk. And he's laughing again. He goes, I got you. Takes me into the room, and he's like, we're going to the hospital. And I'm like, what? He goes, we're going to the hospital. He goes, I can either call an ambulance, but they're going to charge your insurance 20 grand. He's like, or I'll call your husband in, you can drive to 2 minutes. I go, okay. He's like, We may be facing brain surgery. I don't know. And I said, well, first of all, I need a note for work. And he's looking at me like I grew another head, but he's understanding. And I go, are they going to shave my head? And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm going to be the one to do it. He's like, I've been dying to do that. And I'm like, what? He goes, I'm kidding with you. Stop it. But yeah, no, they're going to shave your head. And I'm looking at him still like, what are you doing to me? And he's like, I'm making you smile. Come on, sweetheart. He's like, but no, the hair's going. I wanted to kill him. I didn't need brain surgery. It had changed a little bit, but he was with me the entire time. They were supposed to keep me overnight. It was probably about 11 o'clock at night. I wanted out of the hospital. He called. I hear him arguing. I get on the phone with him. He's like, do you really want out of there? I said, yes, sir. I got to get out of there. He goes, okay, you got to come see me for the next 5 days, every morning in my office. You can't miss a day. He goes, I swear, if you miss a day, I will personally put you in there. I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're going to sign a waiver. This is what you're going to do. He tells me everything. He goes, put them back on the phone. Phone goes back to them. I hear them talking. He hands the phone back to me. He goes, they're going to discharge you. You're going to do A, B, and C. I go, what did you say to them? He goes, oh, I told them what a pain in the ass you were going to be. And you'll drive that floor crazy. He goes, see you tomorrow, honey. Click. This is the kind of man he was. This is how much I loved him. So yes, I put him in the book. He was Zabo, the acid-breathing dragon of the Court of Dark. He got to read it. He also changed his email signatures, the internal memos, because he was head of neurology, to Zabo, the acid-breathing dragon of the Court of Dark. I was there when he did it, and I was there when the phone calls came in. And he put them all on speaker of, did you really just do that? This is what the doctors, his colleagues, were doing. He's like, yeah. And they go, oh, is your favorite patient there? He's like, yes, she is. And he hung up. He thought it was the funniest thing. Unfortunately, he passed away a year ago this April. And he was the nicest guy in the world. But he did get to read it. And he did not get to see his portrait. But it did make it to his memorial, and he is memorialized as a dragon. So for that, I will always be grateful for this book because I have it. And that means so much to me. And there's the teary-eyed thing. So back to the story. I got the book done. I loved it. It went to publishing. I had it edited, as I said. Funny thing is, my old editor, you know, the one that had been editing and leaving me all the comments, was unavailable. So it went to the head of editing. Remember how I had those long lists of comments? Funny thing is, I didn't have it this go round. Kind of weird, right? Yeah. This one barely had any edits. But remember, it went through the exact same editing process. Cleet, Christina, then the publisher. For some reason, with the head of editing, who was an actual editor, like PhD and stuff, had barely anything. But what I did need from them was, I did tournament brackets, kind of like NCAA stuff. And I needed that in the book. Well, I didn't get to proof it, but they said, we're going to charge you $150. If you're watching this, if you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook, I'm going to hold up what I got for $150. See if I can. Very hard to see, but this little bracket right here, it's blurry, but that's what I got. $150 I paid. Let me show you version 2. This is what I did on Canva. It's going to be hard to see, but I think you'll get the picture in a half hour. $150, never got to proof it, and there's a mistake versus that. I will put it up on YouTube so you can see the difference. Yeah, okay. And yes, the X's in the box thing that I had to pay the $40 for came back. So the mystery continues. That little extra proof thing that they had to do that all typesetters know about showed up again in this version. It was back. Mm-hmm. I know. Hold your horses. Yep. I had to pay for that too. Okay. So, while this book was my most critically acclaimed book, most well received, It got no marketing. People didn't even know I did it. Nobody. Not 1 ounce of marketing. If you go right now on Amazon, and there is another version coming out, it has 7 reviews. I couldn't push this book if I stood on a street corner and handed it to people. I have no idea why. Now, during this time, Fourth Wing had come out. People were looking for dragon books. I couldn't give this book away. And to this day, I have no idea why they didn't push it. So yes, I'm releasing a new version, a second edition of it. It's coming out. Love it. And this is the first book that I actually took reader feedback on. They didn't want the dragons, what they were saying, interpreted by the writers. So the dragons actually speak in this book, and you hear everything. Nothing's interpreted. Zabo's part is a little bigger. He's going to get his own novella, of course, but his part is bigger in this book. There's more illustrations, which is what I had originally wanted. In the other book, there's very few illustrations. In this book, every chapter has its own illustrations. The beginning of each chapter has some illustration, whether it's a character, whether it's the egg. All of them, it has something. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite ones. But yeah, nothing. It got nothing. People who read it loved it. They love the whole idea of the pet parent thing. It's dedicated to pet parents. It, to me, was a love letter. It's at the end, there's a picture of my 2 pups, Carlos and Penelope, and their dragon and deer, fae identities. It's a very cute picture, by the way, of them. But it just didn't get any love. Just nothing. I don't know why. I've asked them. I went to my publisher. I was like, what is going on? And they thought they would just let it simmer. I don't know what that means. To this day, I have no idea what it means. But the book did nothing. So I'm re-releasing it. There's a chapter that previews the tournament in From the Ashes. Because I was like, oh, cool. Like I'll preview it. Great. There's action. Anybody can read it. I've had 5th graders read the book and come back, and teachers were like, this is great. It's underdog. It's, Shanair and Callie are goofy. It's this, it's that. Like, cool. But it couldn't get any love. So maybe this go round, it'll get something a little extra. I'm really hoping, because it means so much to me because of the people in it. Los, of course, is in it. All the dragons. I have new dragons, Tatcha, Femina, all these new dragons. I'm really hoping it does something. But this was really something from the heart. It's a little different because of what it meant to me. And I don't know if anybody out there has ever done something where, okay, maybe it didn't get the accolades you wanted, or it didn't go exactly the way you wanted, but at the end of the day, you're just proud of it regardless. That's kind of like what this one is. I mean, yeah, I want to sell a lot of books. Don't get me wrong. That's kind of why I'm doing it. But I just love everything about it. I feel like this was one of the few times I was really in my groove, and it was so authentic. I think probably because a lot of time, my pups were in it. And anytime I do something with my pups, and I think because the second go around putting Zabo in it and being able to write a note to him meant a lot. And knowing that he got to read the first go round, and he had me send it all to his office. He wanted me to send it to the whole floor, and I told him, look, you're a doctor, you could buy it. I'll send it to you and the nurse, but after that, I'll send it to you and Sandy. You got to do something. And he did. So it just means a lot to me. So for a writer's advice, if there's a story calling to you, even if it wasn't planned, like this one, if it's outside your usual genre, I'm just going to tell you to do it. Because sometimes labors of love and things that come from the most unexpected places are the best things you can write. Like I said, they might not be that financial windfall, because we're all looking to have that. I mean, let's be real. We're not doing this for charity. We're doing it because we want it to be successful. We want to pay our bills. But every now and then you get something, you get that spark of a story that just has to come out. And you just need to write it. You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know if it's going to be your book. That's the book that's, skyrockets you. But it might just be the book that is the last rock in the dam before everything comes forward. All that emotional writing that maybe you've kind of been holding back on. This is the story. This is the one that lets it out. And I think for this book, this did help me because I noticed my writing afterwards. I was able to get a little more emotional. And I do have the stories that come after this, Kingdom Come, A Fae is Done, and Forgive Us, are definitely more emotional. But I think I was able to get a little more depth after doing Fire, Ice, Acid, because this allowed me to go someplace where I hadn't been going before. Because the books had been somewhat done. So I think that's kind of a key thing. For everyone who's not a writer and just thinking about it, thinking about their day, think of a time when you had to fight for something, whether it was physical, emotional, or mental. What did the battle teach you about yourself? Just think about that a little bit. Next week, I'll be back with Kingdom Come, the fourth book in the series. If you have any questions, obviously you can DM me at daniellemorsino on Instagram. If you want to read the books for yourself, you can head on over to Amazon. They are all available on ebook. Some are available on paperback, wherever you get your paperbacks from. You can check this out on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Danielle M. Morsino, author. You can check it out there. And if you just want to see me not doing author stuff, you can always check me out on Liberty Bell Smack on 6 p.m. right here on WWDB Talk 860 a.m., 6 p.m. on Thursdays with my co-host Marianne Costello and our chosen producer Tyler, and see what we're talking about then. And it's not always book stuff. So I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week.